And I'm okay to walk around, or is it gonna mess up the
So
camera shot?
someone's going to be moving it around.
Okay.
So you are welcome to walk around. The only thing we have now is we do have this mic for you,
Okay.
and it should allow you to move within kind of here to there.
Okay.
But it's not going to let you move a whole lot.
Okay, I can try to stay.
It's up to you. The other option is I could just leave it like that, and it grabs what it grabs.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Okay.
I could just put it on there, and so it'll just grab you as you walk by.
Okay. All right.
If you'd like to walk around.
All right. So I'll try to stay put as much as possible. And
I think you're welcome to walk around. Usher, you'll track him as he walks, right? You'll track him as he walks. Yeah, we can track you as you walk. We don't want to ruin your flow. So you go ahead. This is on here. It's good. It catches a lot.
Okay. All right.
And you should be fine. I just need to show some slides, and then I'll.
Okay. All you gotta do is go like this. Are you gonna use the whiteboard the entire time, or like towards the end, middle, or
Just at some point.
at some point?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I like that.
So I'll just zoom into you.
okay. All right. So
All right. Going out of town next week. Or do you need this too?
I do not.
Wait, Ustadh, do we need this? Does he need this laptop or?
No, he won't need the laptop. The laptop's for this live stream.
Oh, what about the slides?
And I'm gonna push a few slides, but his slides are gonna go. We're gonna move the
HDMI?
to his. So wherever you want this to go, you can see it. But the mic is connected to it.
Oh, okay. We can just connect it to. Because what if he walks and talks like on the?
It'll still catch it. I don't want to keep him like. You don't have to stay in one spot. So if I connect it to this laptop, will that be okay? Or do you want this laptop out of this?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Okay. If you do, then we'll just keep it on the side.
Because then what we could do essentially.
Do you want to maybe put on the floor, and then that we could have just the mic up here? Maybe if you want it out of the shot.
Yeah, we could do this because any shockwave is gonna start affecting the mic. So I was thinking something like this is.
You need like a okay.
Maybe. As long as it doesn't cover your face.
Wait, what are you trying to do?
It's just that the mic doesn't touch the.
You're trying to make the mic look movable?
Well, not necessarily, but like not on the ground. So.
Do you have a longer
Is there a clip on
this wire like
I have a longer one.
USB-C and a USB? If it's
longer.
yeah.
Oh, I do have a lot of.
Right. So if it's longer, then I can just attach it and then walk with it.
Or we have batteries, so it uses batteries. You can just put batteries.
That's good too. I don't know.
Good thing I'm prepared for this kind of situation.
All right, welcome everybody to Suhbah Institute for our Young Professionals program. I want to give a big thank you to the Young Professionals team, not me, Noor, Usher, Hannah, who's not here with me, she's not at the event here today, for putting this together every month. Raise your hands who has been to a Young Professional program before. Okay, awesome. Anybody, this is your first time? Okay, all right, welcome to the center. With us today, we have Ustadh Fahad Tasleem. I'm going to introduce him in a moment. Just want to show you guys some of the programs we've got going on. So if you guys would like to follow us on Instagram or our WhatsApp, you guys can look at those QR codes. The Young Professionals team has a program every month catering to topics that are interesting to this demographic or pertinent to the challenges that this demographic is struggling with. We have an Umrah coming up at the end of November, inshallah. There are a couple of spots left at this price range, and then it'll just go at market value for the tickets after I think in a few days it will go to market value. Every Friday we have our Tasleem Fridays. We have
Is there a way I can
rotating set of
switch it?
instructors.
Instead of
These are
this
morning
side?
time. So my folks who
No,
have it easier Friday and you're available from 10 to
Is
12.
that all right?
We go through.
Sure.
We went through
If
Suhbah
it
today
rustles,
with
yeah,
Sheikh
that's what I mean.
Arsalan
Yeah.
Majid.
Because on this
We
side,
went through Suhbah, Salah,
Oh, but it's a little
topics
farther,
we've gone
right?
through.
yeah,
We'll be
so
going
if it's
through
on this side,
every
I don't know if you can kind of
10
just
a.m. here at the Sunday
easily
and
there's a
on
way to
we have our Mothers Collective and our Fathers Collective led by licensed professional counselors and Suhbah seminary.
So what you need to do is actually,
just helping moms and dads on
you know,
their
so
journeys through
we
motherhood
probably
and
would take it
fatherhood.
off
So do
somewhere.
check that out
So
if you know
even if I
somebody
rotate
who's
it,
struggling.
No,
It's a great place to find their community. We have some of the juniors team. We actually took them out the other night at the museum last week. We have our Suhbah Sisters Wing, in which we do our Empowered Muslim Women series, a Women's Book series every month. We have the full-time seminary and our weekend seminary running Monday through Friday for the full-time seminary. It's actually our inaugural batch this year. The first year of students coming in 8 to 2 every day, mashallah. And they're doing a lot of work, mashallah, and we're so excited to have them here on campus with us every day. We also have the weekend seminary folks who are here with us every single weekend. And Ustadh Fahad is one of our regular seminary instructors. Alhamdulillah, we've benefited from him immensely. So do check that out for joining maybe next semester. This semester is already underway. Advanced Arabic series with Ustadh here. We have a 5th series every Wednesday after Maghrib here at Suhbah with Sheikh Abdullah Ashraf. And we have some matrimonials, some counseling for premarital training, and a singles marriage prep. And we also do offer online counseling by licensed professional counselors. You can look that up, suhbah.com/counselors. Today we have Ustadh Fahad Tasleem. Ustadh Fahad has been, like I said, a regular instructor here at the Suhbah Institute for a number of years. And we're really, really honored to have him here, actually for the first time for the Young Professionals Job. He is an academic, mashallah, so he has been benefiting the seminary for a very long time. But there are some really important topics and in academia that we need to really get a good depth and handle on. And so we thought of none other than Ustadh Fahad for this project. Ustadh Fahad is one of the instructors at Sapience. Sapience is an institute that does a lot of amazing work with theology, philosophy-related questions for those who have those types of questions and those who are struggling or want to deepen their understanding. We have a couple of books that Ustadh Fahad recommends in the back. You guys can look at our library, tiny little library in the back. And Ustadh Fahad also is completed or in the middle of
about a year left, inshallah.
a year left of his PhD from my alma mater as well in the International Islamic University of Malaysia. I hope Malaysia has been treating you well.
It was good.
Now, because of the fans, we're going to try to use this mic if that's okay. If you feel like you don't want to be bound by the mic, we could turn the fans off. So,
Okay.
what do you think? It's up to you.
I'll let them decide, inshallah. All right.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-kareem Fahad. So, how is everyone doing this evening? Alhamdulillah, good. So we're gonna play it by ear. I don't know if you want the cooling of the fan and the echo of the mic, or me just projecting my voice without the fans. So I'll leave that up to you guys. I know there's a slight echo, but I can project my voice pretty decent. So if you want to change this setup, just let me know, inshallah. Okay, so what I was thinking about for tonight, and I was looking at the schedule that was sent. They said, all right, 7 o'clock we'll start, 7:30 we'll break for Maghrib, then we'll have the lecture, then we'll have a Q&A, and then we'll have something else, and yada, yada, yada. But what I thought would be more beneficial, especially looking at the topic itself, was to maybe do a few thought experiments and do some exercises. I think that's a little bit better in the sense that I could tell you information, which would just be abstract knowledge, but for you to now implement it, think about it, and see like what are, let's say, the ramifications of not having Islam, and to kind of feel it in a way that's a lot more visceral than just me just talking, I think that would be a lot better. Okay? So, what we're going to do, bismillah, is, actually you can't see slides, that's fine. I'm gonna divide you guys up into groups. Okay? So I've counted, and I think someone just walked in, so let me recount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's do 5 guys, 5 gals, and 5 guys. All right, sisters, inshallah. So with you guys, you're already divided, so you're good to go. So go ahead and send. So is it still on? It is. Okay. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You guys are all in one group. See that? What I did? So right here, 1 in front. Yes, 2. Purple, 3, 4, 5. Just split. You guys are in the 3 groups. So our 2 groups, sorry. All right. So maybe like a line down the middle. Let's do that. Okay. Now there are 5 people in each group. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give each group one particular issue. And how that's going to work is I'm going to select 2 people that are for the issue, 2 people that are against the issue, and 1 person that's going to be the judge. All right? So 2 people for, 2 people against, 1 person is the judge. Fellas, you got that? Okay. Now, everyone will have 1 minute to brainstorm the issue once I show you what the issue is. Okay? After that minute, the person that is for the issue, or the 2 people that are for the issue, they will present their support for the issue. After 1 minute, the next team, which is against the issue, will present their support for the issue. In the final minute, the judge, the one who's going to adjudicate, all right, this is going in and out. Is it all right? Okay. In the final minute, the 1 person is going to adjudicate between which case is right and why. Why do they think it's right? Okay, so just to reiterate very quickly, 2 people for, 2 people against, 1 judge. All right, you guys get a minute each. So let me count down here. Count, go, right here.
5,
5,
4.
Wait, actually, that's not how it works. Okay, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so number 1 and 2, you guys will be for the issue. All right, 3 and 4 against the issue. You'll be the judge. All right, so are you for or against?
4.
4 against. 4 against. Against, 4 against. Against, and you are? The judge. All right, good. All right, we'll start on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, you guys will be for the issue. You will be the judge. Yeah, I'm switching it up now. You're going to be the judge. And 4 and 5, you will be against the issue. All right? So who's for? 4? 4? Judge. Very good. Don't forget it. All right. Against? Against. All right. We'll start in a different order here. So 1, 2, against the issue. Okay? 3, judge. 4 and 5, for the issue. All right? I didn't want to make this easy, you know. Anyway, so you are for or against? For or against? Judge. Against? Against. All right. All right. We'll let the ladies go first. All right, I want you guys to pick a number between 1 and 3. Anyone. You just have your judge can do it. 2? Okay. Between 1 and 3. The judge can decide. 1 and 3. Any number, 1 and 3. Just pick. It's only 2 numbers, man. We already have ikhtilaf. So 1 or 3? 1. All right. So 2, 1. You guys are left with 3. Here are the issues. You can't really see them.
I'm about to.
You're about to put them up. Okay.
You want to just connect the HDMI to this?
Okay. Just make sure you remember what issue you guys are.
I got it from Hannah, so it should.
Okay. Well, while she's doing that, I'll just read it out. So who was number one? You guys are number one? Okay. So back in 2015, there was a court case, all right? I'm not sure how to pronounce the guy's name, but it's Oberfell versus Hodges. And that case in 2015 was as follows. I want everyone to listen to this. In 2015, preceding this, Oberfell, or however you pronounce his name, he had a partner, right? His name was John Oberfell. His partner was James. Now, he found out that James had a chronic illness. He was terminally ill. So he wanted to marry James, but he happened to live in the state of Ohio. So what they did is they traveled to Maryland and they got married. Okay? When they came back and eventually, John died, James went to the court in Ohio and they said you have no rights as a surviving spouse. Okay, so this case went to the Supreme Court. It's a very famous case and it's related to gay marriage. So now, you remember for and against? So two people will argue for gay marriage and two people will argue against gay marriage. All right? All right. Who's number two? You guys number two? Wait. All right. Okay. In Iceland, that's number two, right? Okay. So in Iceland, they have a very robust program of prenatal screening. Now, what that means is that, when a woman is pregnant, they can screen to see if the child that's going to be born by way of genetic testing, whether that child will be born with Down syndrome. Okay? So Iceland is one of the few countries in the world that has an almost zero rate of Down syndrome in their country. Okay. Is it ethical to abort a child with Down syndrome? For and against. All right? You guys remember who you are. All right. Last group. They're like, man. So in Nevada, there are certain rural places that have brothels. You guys know what brothel is? Okay. So should prostitution be legalized? So for and against, you guys know who you are, right? So what are you? For or against? Okay. All right, everyone got their issue? All right, now here's the thing. You still get these slides. There's a catch, however. You guys ready for it? You cannot use Islam in your justification. You cannot. You cannot refer to anything related to Islam. Everyone clear about that? That is a rule. The second you say Qala Allah, Qala Rasulullah, whatever it is, you can't. Okay? All right. So what we'll do now, I will give you 1 minute to think about how you will justify your for or against. I'll stop the time. Those who are going to go against will have their minute. Then you'll have 1 minute for the judge to think about and present who they think is the winner. And then we'll reconvene. All right? Everyone ready?
Let me refresh the page.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I need it. Okay, that's fine. It's all right. All right, here we go. 1 minute to ponder the issue. Go.
Yeah, I feel this way. Well,
It's funny because I use ChatGPT most times and ask it, oh, I'm sorry, I can't answer this question through secular route. So I was like, I'm writing an essay and I need to know both sides. So ChatGPT together.
Nice.
So alhamdulillah, I'm not part of it.
Okay, that is time. So the people that are for need to present their case to the judge. You have 1 minute.
You said 4?
Time starts now. All the people that are for need to present their case to the judge. All right, that is time. Not questions at the end. That's time. The folks that are against need to present their case to the judge now. Time starts now.
Should they have the mic or?
Yeah.
One is that it ruins the mindset of the like, you know, support.
Okay, that's time. So now, judges, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about what you just heard. And after 30 seconds, you're going to present which do you think is the winner and why. Okay, so you have 30 seconds. I'll let you think about it. Nobody's talking. No more convincing. Just think about what you heard. After 30 seconds, I'll randomly call on one of the judges to present why, what opinion they think is correct and why. Ready? Go. No discussing, please. No discussing with any of the teams, judges. Discussion time is over. Just think about what you heard. Okay. So does anyone want to volunteer? Any judge want to volunteer to go first? In 5, 4, you want to go first? Okay, what was the issue that was presented for you?
Can our brothels, should they be legal?
Or should prostitution be legal?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you have a minute. Which opinion did you think was more convincing and why?
So the side that was for it, I feel like had better evidence presented.
Okay, which was?
Which was that economically, it would disrupt the economy more. It's a way of living for a lot of women.
Okay.
And second, for men, certain men, they need to fulfill their desires. So this is a safe way that they can do it without hurting like other women.
Boys gotta be boys.
Okay. So,
And
so you felt that the four folks basically took the cake.
We had another
because
argument.
the against case was STDs, but then I think they use protection and stuff. So that's
Okay, so you make protection mandatory.
Yeah, and then
Gotcha.
also said it breaks up families. But like, what about single guys who can't have families?
Okay, so it has a service to single guys.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. All right. We will open the issue up, by the way, to the general populace here in just a second. All right. Any of the two judges on these teams want to volunteer, or should I just pick? Just pick? Okay, I'll let you go. What was your issue?
Abortion.
Abortion. All right.
Abortion.
Yeah, specifically aborting a Down syndrome child. So is it ethical or not? That was really what it was. So what convinced you?
If I leave Islam out of it,
Yes,
I'm looking at
absolutely.
only the whether the child is considered a life or not, first and foremost, and that's debatable. But I cannot. Everyone can agree that the mother is alive, the father is alive, the caregiver has a right to quality of life. So I refer back to the caregiver, so I would say 4.
So you go with 4. So again, what was the reasoning for the 4?
Because there's no contest on whether or not they have a right to quality of life.
So you are for aborting Down syndrome children,
For the quality of life of the
or against aborting Down syndrome children?
4 in this case.
4 in this case, not 4 in reality, obviously. Let's make it clear. I know we're talking about very. So in this case, as a judge, between two, as objective as possible. So for aborting Down syndrome children, you're for it, and then the reasoning was what again?
I would have to consider the child a life before I can look at their views and what they're saying about how the child deserves a good life.
Okay, and that is why you're for aborting Down syndrome children.
Yes.
Okay, all right, fair enough. All right, last judge, what was your issue?
So the side that's against gay marriage.
So you're going with the side against gay marriage.
No, I'm introducing their point.
Don't worry about the point. What convinced you and why? That's it.
Well, it was versus they were talking about the case specifically,
Okay.
and so the point that's the strongest to me was because if gay marriage is illegal in this particular state that you're in, then
Okay.
it should be allowed to hold. You shouldn't have the property shouldn't be allowed to have access to the property because it's not legal in the state you're living in. But it was
Okay, so are you for or against gay marriage? I guess just make it very simple. That's really what the question is asking.
yeah, but we're arguing about the case.
Okay, all right.
That's why with the case, I think the against side had more.
So against gay marriage.
Yeah.
Okay, why? What evidence convinced you?
Another evidence was just that if it's not, it's more of a friendship. If it's same sex, it's more of like I don't know. That's what it is.
So you were kind of on the fence then, maybe. You weren't really. Okay, all right, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. All right, good job, guys. MashaAllah. All right. What did you find hard about these issues? Wait, this is a man. Wait, we're all adults. Okay, aside from the time,
It's hard because as a Muslim.
okay, as a Muslim, all right, had you had Islam, would it make the issue easier to discuss? Okay, Allah, that lecture's over. So, I mean, that's pretty much what it is, right? All right, let's take these issues one at a time, because I wanted to open it up to just everyone and kind of get your thoughts and see if we can crack some sort of ethic without Islam just from the group we have here, okay? So we'll start with gay marriage. So the folks that were for gay marriage, all right, what were some of the evidences that you presented?
We were saying that if they're gay, they have the right to like property, finance, and all that. Versus like in the States, it's actually like against gay people don't have that right versus straight people.
Okay,
So.
okay, fair enough. Does anyone who is not against the issue in this group want to reply to this?
Not against it, but do I have to?
Yeah, not, I mean, you don't agree with that.
Oh.
Or does everyone agree with that?
What, that, because I feel like.
Because they have, so gay people should have the same rights as straight people, is essentially what you're saying. All right. So no arguments against that, unless you have Islam? Really?
I mean, outside of I feel disgusting about it, what argument can I make to justify that they are less?
So let me ask you guys this. What arguments, yeah.
I guess I'm saying, I guess it would affect populations if,
Mm,
gay
okay.
marriages, I guess, you can have children, or
Okay.
And off of it. Like,
Fair enough. So if, let's say, being gay was normative, that's the normal way to go, then your species would finish. That's essentially what our argument is, right? What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I
Is
feel
that
like
a valid, strong argument?
I feel like it's time to wrap it up anyways. You know what I mean? So
It's what?
it's time to wrap it up anyways. I feel like we got through the experiment.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
oh, I feel like we should also define what a marriage is. Like, what is the actual definition? Is it
Okay.
Is it between a man and a woman? I think that'll help us further debate.
So that's really what the debate is.
what
Is marriage only between a man and a woman? Or can you have a marriage between a man and a man and a woman and a woman? Depending on how you define those things as well in this day and age. Yeah, so that's really essentially what the issue is.
For me, for that case though, I feel like it's more contract law.
Okay, wait. So you feel it's contract law?
Yes. Because
Okay, how so?
in that case, they went to another state to get married, and where it was legal.
Okay.
And that's a contract between that state. But marriage is the type of contract that universally
Okay.
it's recognized. So if I were to go to Europe and I'm married to my spouse here,
Yeah.
my contract is recognized locally.
So let's dig down into that. Did everyone hear what he said about the fact that it's a contract? Yeah? Okay. What gives contracts validity from an ethical standpoint?
From an ethical standpoint.
Not meaning like, so there's a contract being given validity by fiat, by the government, right? Forget the government for a second. We're talking purely ethics. You have a contract. What gives the contract validity from an ethical vantage point?
Because if nothing was
Wait,
stable,
hold on.
if nothing was stable, we couldn't operate.
So if there weren't contracts, society would crumble.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I push you a little bit more on that?
Yeah.
Okay. What makes a contract valid?
Agreement.
Consent.
Consent, yeah.
All right. Is it possible to have consent in a contract and yet the contract is invalid?
Yes.
Yes. So it's not consent then, as an absolute.
No, not as absolute.
Okay.
Because,
So it has to be consent. It has to be something else too then.
authority, essentially. Like we're not.
What do you mean by authority?
If we're trying to take Islam out of it, right?
Yeah.
Well,
We're not taking Islam out of it. We're just putting it on the side for a second.
So, the sense that humans have a kind of will and I don't know, like a sense of.
We're getting metaphysical now, man. This is
it's like
we have a conscience and
we have our ability to exert force.
okay.
And so if I have a mutually agreed upon thing with
Okay.
someone else,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be able to stop it because you don't like it.
Okay, let me give you an example, all right? There was a news report some years ago. There was a lady that walked into a bank, an older lady, and she went to the teller and she's like, I'd like to take out $50,000 cash.
Yes.
So the teller, you guys know about this case? You know about this case? No? So the teller's like, and she's an older lady, right? Like, so she's like, what do you need the $50,000 for? She said, well, my toilet broke and the plumber came and he's charging me $50,000 to repair it. So now obviously the bank teller called the police, found this unscrupulous plumber, and the contract was null and void, obviously. Now someone could say that there was consent in the contract, but there was something missing in the contract, which was what?
Sanity, or like equal parties. There weren't
Having the same knowledge, in other words.
Yeah.
So what they call informed consent.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, is the validity of a contract consent or information?
Well, no, because even in business, the only way business works is because I have more information than you, so I can make more out of this deal for you. So even though I may have more information than you, you can still
Right.
make a valid contract.
So it's not about informed consent then.
It's
Because-
more to it than informed
Because disproportionality is part of how business works anyway,
Yes.
right? So you're saying it doesn't have to be informed consent. If you were the judge in this case, you're like, look, man, the lady agreed to it, khalas. Give her the $50,000.
No, that one is different because there's a sense of sanity and not being in your right mind.
Okay, who adjudicates whether the person's sane enough to make a contract or not?
Society.
Society. Okay, so you open it up as a democratic, like, is the
Well,
lady?
no.
Okay.
But like society,
Because believe me, if you go down that route,
no.
you have people that are still discussing what's a woman, so.
Right. No, I'm saying society has like means and mechanisms to get through this, right? We would have a process where you went to school for years, you did some studying, you studied under this guy, you did apprenticeships, and now you're a judge, and now you have enough information and a wealth of knowledge, and you can decide between this and this. That's what we, and that's what I mean.
Fair enough. Why, by the way, there's a reason why I brought up the concept of consent and informed consent. Because once you bring Islam back into the picture, what you'll find is that consent is sometimes used against Islamic law. All right? Now, specific examples that I'm thinking about, for instance, maybe something like in the case of a marriage. Now, this is, we're all adults here. Is there such a thing as marital rape within an Islamic marriage? There is. Are you sure?
If we're gonna be technical here.
So technically, remember, Islamically, there's a concept of harm. La dara wa la dara. Right? There's no harm, no causing harm. But there is also, as you may know, a very clear hadith of the Prophet where he says that a woman who, does not, satisfy her man, whatever it is, the angels curse her, right? Whatever it might be. Now, I know this is very contentious, but understand that if it is solely based on consent, and that is the only thing, you have a serious issue here within marriages under the Islamic framework. Okay? This is why I'm teasing the concept of consent. Because as solid as we think it is, it's not that solid. Right? I'll give you another really whack example. Okay? There was there's a very famous, and this relates to your issue, a famous prostitute that's a very well-known writer. And she was writing about bestiality. And she was talking about consent. I said, hold on a second. If you are going to now have relations with an animal, right? You don't have consent.
Yeah, how can an animal consent?
Right? How can an animal consent? And so therefore, how can you justify bestiality? The only way you can do that is that if every person that engages in bestiality has to be a vegan. Right?
Wait, what?
Why? Because if you are against harming an animal, then killing an animal is much worse than what you're doing. So therefore, consent is irrelevant in this case. Here's what I'm trying to get at. As you start to tease away at ethics without a source, without a root, you start to find those principles start to fade away. Start to fade away very quickly. Okay? This distinction gets into when we talk about, in a few minutes we will, objective morals versus subjective morals. And you know what I'm talking about. We'll come to that when we do. Okay, we'll park that issue for a second. Let's move to what the second issue? Aborting, okay. So, the judge said, you were for it. Okay, anyone against it? You can't use this stuff.
Not really.
So everyone is in agreement that if you find out there's a child that's going to be born that has Down syndrome, get rid of it. Everyone's for it? Oh, y'all are against it? Okay, so that's what I'm asking. All right, so tell me why.
The accuracy of the test.
The accuracy of the test.
Like if it's false positive, you might be killing someone without Down syndrome.
Okay, all right, accuracy of the test. There's a possibility it may not have Down syndrome. At what accuracy would you say that it has to be 100%? So now this is going to go a little more philosophical. What information do you have about anything that's 100% certain? Yeah, what?
I would never allow it because of that.
No. What I'm saying is, we'll take ourselves out of this particular example. What thing do you know about that you're 100% certain about, that you have 100% accuracy about? Nothing, right? So at what level of certainty do you say, okay, the rajih, the preponderance of evidence is here, therefore I can take an action? Do you have a certain number in mind? Or no? So it would never be the case because of this one uncertainty. Okay, how do you justify that uncertainty then? In other words, you can use uncertainty to justify other things. Why not this particular event? That's true. I want a little more robust answer than just that's true. You capitulated too quick, man. All right. Yes, go ahead, sister.
You can make the argument that why would that constitute the need to end their life? I mean, they still have they still are, able to enjoy life. They're able to, although they're not able to do everything that a non-disabled person can do, they still have some capacity for quality of life. So
Okay.
that shouldn't constitute the need to abort a child if the test indicates they have Down syndrome. Like, they still have the right to
Okay.
live.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hold on to that point. Does everyone agree with what she said? First, everyone hear what she said? Everyone agree with what she said? The reasoning, I'm not talking about agreeing because you're Muslim and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. The reasoning is sound.
I don't agree with
You don't agree with the reasoning. All right. What would you say against that?
So if I'm a country and I wanted to exert force against everybody else, I want to ensure that me and my offspring were at the best possible, strength and capabilities.
Sure.
To be able to produce a better outcome for everybody.
Sure.
So therefore, I would say, and that's a minor. I don't want to put into that possibility.
Sure.
I'd rather have a guaranteed result or as guaranteed as possible with these tests.
Okay.
So I would do that just for the sake of the overall well-being.
Okay. So your argument is what we call teleological. In other words, it goes back to the purpose of the state, the country, the power, basically, right? So if you're producing less children with Down syndrome, you have a stronger, I guess, a better country.
Yeah.
Or a better society, in your opinion. All right. You want to respond to that? Or does anyone want to respond to that? Okay, go ahead.
So I agree with the sister. Like, when it comes down to we have to first define when it's considered like a baby or a life. So then that way it has to have rights, right?
Okay.
Okay, at 3 months it's considered a life, then it has rights. And if it has rights, then you're technically killing the baby.
Okay, wait. But you said a lot of ifs in that statement. So how do we determine what's a life? You can't use Islam.
To answer your question, you got to first determine when that baby is actually considered to have
Fair enough. So how do we answer that question? I agree. Like the premise is that, okay, life. You have to, so how do we determine life? Yeah.
If it has some intellectual capacity like obviously the baby can't make an informed decision, but like if he knows consciousness, like you can determine consciousness of the baby.
Really?
If you could.
But again, if, I got all these ifs, low. Low means shit. Anyways, yeah. Go ahead. So you base it on a heartbeat. So in other words, going back to your point, if we agree that a heartbeat is the determining factor, okay, but then how do you respond to this point? He says, you know what? Doesn't matter if it has a heartbeat or not. Like, first of all, you might not even agree that that's where life starts. Okay, so now how do you respond to this particular point?
So if we're not using Islam, then we're using science, right? You gotta have
I mean, and you use anything except Islam. You use Christianity for all I care.
So you would have to have some sort of standard. And if we're not using Islam or religion, then we're using science. So when does science get fucked?
Okay, here's an important question for you guys. Can science, any science, give you morals?
No.
Okay. So when you say, okay, the thing that's going to adjudicate.
Yes, actually it can.
Okay, hold on. Where, when, how?
So science is based off of observation and right. So can I use Islam here or no?
No.
Okay.
You
I was gonna say, if we know something through scientific principles, where it has a better outcome, like let's say drinking alcohol, like it poisons you, and we know this through science, and I, as a government, said I wanted better for my country,
Sure.
and I'm going to ban alcohol because of the effects it has on my society through car crashes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would use that as a sense of morality and ethics because it'd be better for the, community.
Okay. Does anyone see an underlying problem with that, or should I point it out? No one?
There isn't.
There isn't.
There is.
There is. Okay, you tell me. What do you think it is?
The problem is my expression, freedom of sense and will. What if I can moderate it to myself and
No, that's not even the issue.
Really?
The issue is you're assuming an ethic to show that science has an ethic. In other words, your presupposition here is that you think that, let's say, drinking leads to death, and death is wrong, which is an ethical conclusion, right? It's based on ethics. So can science show us that death is wrong? But you have to have a definition of wrong first, ethically. In fact, by the way, as a principle, science is amoral. It cannot tell you whether something is moral or not moral, right?
Well, you can use science to influence things, will be the better.
Inference based on certain
No,
ethics.
influence.
Oh yeah, influence, of course, yeah, yes.
Does the benefit outweigh the harm? Because, like, for example, like, it'd be a waste of resources if you were to use more resources to do something and get like less resources out of it, right?
So, how do you define benefit? How do you define harm? Are we talking about psychological harm,
Net positive.
only financial harm, physical harm, spiritual harm, religious harm? And flip that with benefits. Financial benefits, psychological benefits, social benefits,
And which one of those are more
religion,
important?
and which ones have a higher value?
And
You guys think you're coming to think tonight, didn't you? Okay, yes, last point.
To maybe go back to the earlier argument of how to respond to the initial one about using abort in the test to abort children Down syndrome to produce a better general society. I think we can look at it from the perspective of can the elimination of one person's right outweigh supporting general society? Like, which I think we should find, whether it's kind of like the trip.
Utilitarian argument.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, all right, fair enough. Did you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that like the main point. I just wanted to say, like, so if you can't determine Down syndrome, you can probably determine a lot of other things too, right?
Sure.
A child can be born with so many other disabilities, like
Right.
can be born with the
Or positive aspects, depending on the parents. I want a kid with blue eyes, blonde hair, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Ender's
like,
Game.
where does it stop? Like, if everyone
Eugenics,
tries to
eugenics.
like determine like, okay, I'm gonna only like give birth to a child if he has XYZ like qualities
True.
and not anything else. So where does it stop? Like, anyone can decide like, okay, I can press a button and like, no, I don't want the perfect characteristics.
So this argument is probably the strongest, I would say, right? And this is why, I was referring to eugenics, this is why, Nazis are looked at as really negatively, because they're eugenics projects. Most people don't know that, in fact, Hitler got it from the US, where they started these projects of, going to poor neighborhoods, African Americans, because they wanted to have a pure society. So they actually started to go in and inject African American women with all sorts of stuff to kind of get to that pure race. And eventually it became illegal, but that's where Hitler got it from. But anyway, that eugenics project was based on this very concept, right? But even that has holes, though, all right? Okay, last issue, and then I want to move on to a deeper point. So that was our folks, or was that the last issue?
No, prostitution.
Prostitution, right? Okay.
It shows in 8 minutes.
Ah.
So we can break and then come back. Like,
Well,
whatever you want.
So
It's at 8:45. We can do like 3 more minutes.
So let's do 3 minutes. I want to wrap this issue up, and then when we come back, kind of just, kind of give you the khulasa, the summary of everything, inshallah, and what to take home. All right. So very quickly, the issue itself. So who was for? Who was against?
Oh,
Remind me. You were for. Okay. And against, and you said your judgment was for. Okay. Anyone against the issue? Anyone against prostitution being legalized? Okay, remember, you can't use Islam. Okay, yes. Why?
There's plenty of reasons. I think it causes like desensitization to things that should, like I would say it gives it would affect your morality in other ways. Like if with this one thing,
Okay.
like it's into other like behaviors and all that. Like I think it's more of a psychological issue. I think, like.
So psychological, because of psychological harm.
Yes, psychological harm and like how it would affect like other behavior.
Okay. So you're prioritizing psychological harm.
I would, if I wasn't in Islam, like this would be my logic. Like,
Okay, all right. So
then the next question would be, why prioritize psychological harm?
Because it would harm society.
Why prioritize societal harm? That'd be the next question.
Well,
Because I live here.
Because I live here, right?
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Anybody else? Okay.
Again.
Let's hear from one of the guys. Yes.
Meaningful relationships become meaningless, or meaningful intimacy becomes meaningless.
Yes.
Okay. So we have to then come to some sort of understanding of what is meaningful, what is meaningless.
I disagree totally.
Like
You disagree?
I say if it's widely open and accessible,
Sure.
I feel.
It would be more meaningful.
No, I feel it would
Oh,
be.
okay.
I feel you would have the choice, and you would have the wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and you'd be able to discern that, like, no, that's not really what I want to do. I'd rather have this.
Some experience.
No, here's what I'm saying. No,
Okay.
not just you doing it. I'm saying
Okay.
if it's acceptable, like a part of it being popular is the taboo of it.
Okay.
So if it's just widely acceptable, because just as humans, we just naturally don't like that. Like,
Sure.
as a man, I don't like a woman who's been around. That's just
Sure.
right. So if I know that's what she does,
Right.
I'm naturally just going to be against it anyway. So why not just
Sure.
make it open up and take away the taboo and see who actually goes and who doesn't?
So then it goes back to what she talked about, desensitization, or someone said desensitization, correct?
We live in it.
We-
I open up my phone.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna, like, last comment, but it has to be really quick.
I was thinking like you were asking why prioritize psychological health.
Yeah.
The reason you're legalizing the first place would be because of psychological fulfillment. So then then you're assuming that that's an important factor, right? So then.
But is it psychological fulfillment or is it physical fulfillment?
Or it's biological, whatever. So then I feel like by physiological.
Physiological fulfillment, okay, all right.
They're connected. I'm assuming psychological.
Fair enough.
Physiological. They're going to be connected.
Okay, all right. Good discussion. Here's what I'm gonna leave you with. I'll just go pray. But here's what I want you to think about. So first of all, does anyone know of any clothing, like a color of clothing that is forbidden in Islam to wear?
For a man,
For anybody?
Red.
red.
Red? Okay, all right.
Full red. Yeah.
A certain type of red.
Not like full, like,
A full red.
yeah.
Okay, all right. So the question we want to ask now is why? And not just why, but what does my question of why really mean? All right, and it has two aspects. When you ask, if someone doesn't know, let's say, that red is haram to wear, or a certain type of red, let me just qualify that, and it has to be full, the question that will come to their mind is why? But how they're asking the why is very important. In other words, they would ask, why, i.e., this is an epistemic question, how do we know it's haram? Is this in a hadith? Is this in the Quran? How do we know? This is an epistemic question. Another why is, how could Allah make that ethical or unethical? Or unethical to wear red in the first place? Do you see the difference? So just because someone asks why, it doesn't mean it's the same question. One person might be asking why, i.e., how do we know that? Where are you getting your information from? It's an epistemic question. The other one is a moral question. Like, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make a certain color haram? And we'll talk about that in the after salah. So,
Chef, why so interesting?
what's up?
It was like intense conversation.
That was the point.
I know, I'm saying for real. It's like you're in the shop. So, you're not even going around. As long as.
So we break here. Okay, we started.
Yeah, they got started.
Come on.
I guess
Thank you. Well, we're in a class where violence are I'm hoping for starting soon for us. I'm hoping.
How have you been? I'm good. Remind me your name.
I feel like there's another event at the river or something. Oh, or one before that, right? That's tomorrow. Today. Yeah, that's what I was debating. You think that you're like, it's kind of at the same time. Yeah.
I know. I was like, Mama, you're making us compete against ourselves here.
And that's the thing.
You're so funny.
When I saw him,
He's speaking at that one.
Yes, I think that's on the weekend.
That's another one. Yeah.
That's another one. That's happening
This
this
is
weekend.
it's with the Sar Sultan.
That's right. Yeah.
Counselor. So it's sort of like people being able to feel their grief and work through it and make dua instead of just like constantly seeing. Like we have to take some action and do something with their heart. So it's sort of like a
Wait, mental health?
yeah. Just like kind of work through it.
It's a live on Mariam Masjid website. Mariam Masjid Instagram. I decided my. So, not sure why. Was the Jamaica the same thing? Because it's not that big, not that River Oaks, right?
Today's the hood goes on friendship.
Oh, okay.
Friendship, not your football friendship.
Like that was the main reason why I pushed hard for having Fridays off, and then I'm like, probably Joanne's thinking about me. So everybody, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. And then I'm like, it's not fun. Joanne's at 1:30. There's no time. I was like, next Joanne, inshallah. Where do you go? Well, I either go to the Islamic Dial Center downtown, or I go to River Oaks Islamic Center, or I go to Masjid Islam. So all over the place. Well, I live in Spring, but my parents live in Houston, so it depends just where I'm at.
How low?
Yeah, it's nice. You have to come early though for parking for Jamaica.
Yeah, because I think this is also popular.
Yeah. I mean, their parking lot is small, and if you don't find a spot in there, once they close the lot, you're gonna have to do like street parking or garage parking around, which is busy downtown. Yeah, I honestly like spring. I go like it's quieter, it's calmer.
Maybe we do better events though.
I don't go a lot, so I don't usually know what's going on. Like I know like when I was living in the Heights, River Oaks was like they had the Tuesday helicopter plus one. Jamaica was always really good. They would do weekend events, and they have like a class also I think for Congress that they have. Some Dawson is obviously very quiet. It's just not Ramadan or Jummah. There isn't much going on. I know Masjid Hamza is active. That's a masjid that has a lot of activities.
I mean, I live in
Because to be honest, all of those no, it is. Yeah, so like a lot of the gymnastics happen there. Yeah.
they have the facilities there.
I feel like every gymnasium is pretty similar there.
Yeah, we do ours, the North Side is just an hour or something.
No, it's a nice one. It's a big one.
Well, the doctor's book.
It's a nice one. The roads next to it might not be like that Rueda area, yeah, but
It's by the weather, I can't afford it.
the masjid itself has nice structure.
The weather area is not small.
I was just gonna say that. We pulled it out of my
They kind of ruined the whole park.
then I also think that it's hot.
Oh,
So, we're like gonna work on that.
We're
Here,
not
keep it
gonna
sweet
work.
here.
how it is a lot.
No, I'm working tomorrow.
What do you do? Oh, do you take off Friday? Oh, so you have to go on hours.
Yeah.
So
So,
you took off Fridays.
well, Saturdays are in the max, so usually like we try to open Saturday, we just work a fixed schedule, like 9 to 2, no break. We try to get as many people in and out. It's very flexible, honestly. Like, but the days I work, I work 9 to 6. By the time I get out, it's 7.
Where's the office?
Conroe.
Working Conroe.
But you'd be surprised. Conroe from Spring is only 17 minutes if there's no traffic.
Are you kind of like between Woodlands and Conroe?
Yes.
Oh.
So it's kind of like,
Woodlands, Washington.
yeah. So it's like Spring is defined as Spring, the zip code is Spring, but you're kind of in the woodlands. I'm virtually challenged. So, well, you have Spring, you have the woodlands, you have Conroe.
People who don't go to the south, people from south don't go to north.
Well, Spring is here, Spring's up here, right? Yeah, you're moving north.
Yeah.
From Houston.
So just think of Woodlands, Conroe being on the same.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I-45.
One go. You're far. Still like an hour. From Houston?
45 to 50.
Conroe is about 50 minutes if there's no traffic.
50 minutes from downtown.
Yeah. Central Houston. If there's traffic,
Hour.
at least an hour. But you go from Spring, you go into the woodlands, and then we're just talking like what's next to I-45, not going into those
Yeah.
cities. Once you go into them, that's a different story. But I live close to I-45, and my job is next to I-45 exactly. So that's why I just get on the highway with one go, like 17 miles down.
Just 17 minutes.
Yeah. If there's no traffic. If there is half an hour, multiply by 2, twice the time. Honestly, the thing is just like, it was really nice. There's no traffic. But the nice thing, okay, it's not a good thing, but my job is very flexible, so I start at 9. If I show up at 9:15 or 9:20, they're okay with it. So I think over the years I've just become the 9:15, 9:20 person. Because my patients are never ready at 9. They come at 9 to check in.
People gotta come in and they're still filling out
Yeah,
the
they
form.
still fill their consent forms. They still kind of like, their insurance and everything is verified. So by the time that is done, I'm like, 15 minutes.
So it's your own private.
No, I work for somebody.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I would own.
Like a specialist or just general?
I'm general, but I work mostly with children.
Oh.
I like kiddos.
Usually people with babies.
Yeah, from 6 months all the way to elderly. Kids are much easier to work on.
Are they?
Yeah.
What do you do with people who don't have gums, even with babies?
Oh, that's the easiest appointment. You're getting paid for nothing. You're getting paid to just take a peek, wipe their gums, and go.
Because they don't have gums at that age.
I mean, sometimes they'll have like, you'll notice that like some kids will have little growth or something that's not normal that needs to be like taken care of. You know, special needs kids have other issues. So like cleft palate kids, all that. So those are things you notice early and help get it fixed. So, and you'd be surprised, parents are not aware of a lot, which is something where like, you have 3, 4 kids, I would think by now you've figured it out. I guess not. And I guess it gets overwhelming also when you have a lot of kids to keep track of what's going on with everybody.
It's different from home.
Yeah, that's very true.
What can you do? There's a 2-year-old that has like small cavities. Like there isn't anything to do right at that point. You just gotta wait for it to fall out eventually.
No, they don't start losing baby teeth until the age of 6.
Yeah, so
But if they get infection and it spreads systemically, the kid is at risk. So we send them to the hospital for GA to get treatment. And
I
it
noticed that we have like very like clear cavities and then you can kind of tell like all of the front teeth.
usually they just and sometimes when they get really bad, because
Does it get us from breastfeeding?
milk,
Bottle milk? Not bottle.
and even after, because at night they breastfeed, right? Or they drink their bottle and then they sleep and then milk sits on their teeth all night. And they repeat the cycle the next day. And the next day, milk has sugar.
That's true.
Yeah. So, you're not gonna find a baby wake up and go brush their teeth or rinse their mouth. So, and if I'm a parent who just put my kid to sleep, I'm not gonna wake up that screaming monster and clean their teeth. So, it's a challenge, and it's sad. Because sometimes it's like you want your 3-year-old or 4-year-old to go through hospitalization and all that to be prevented. And everyone inside. I guess it won't.
I was looking at that map, and I was like, it's interesting how there's like one area where
There's like nobody, like just like Europe. Like it's just like Russia, here, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, China, nobody really.
these people are not used to lyrics.
So where?
I'm saying,
Like I was saying,
oh, we're going to show us a nursing home. Wow, they do all over the world. I would love to see it up, but I'm not excited.
so wait, are they just doing online? I think it's the idea. It's one semester. It's like you have to commit. It's not
I love that.
oh, where you go? Walking from you? Nigeria? I just noticed it, but I noticed the concentration of the pins is like more with right. I mean, this is all over.
I'm gonna have one here.
Yeah.
One here.
Like a lot of pictures.
Where are you from?
Oh, everybody left. There's more. There's no stay. My parents were here. My parents, they came from Ramadan and my mom had medical follow-ups. And then they were supposed to go back in the Ramadan, which was like around April. And the war started in April. And nobody thought it was going to be anything, right? They thought maybe there was a little altercation it was in. So my parents, they were like planning. My mom packed her stuff, and she was like, finally, we're leaving here. My parents felt like they're not happy here. They just come for the summer to see us. And so then the kids escalated. My brother was like, oh my God, she was in that. I think things are like escalating. And so then from there, things just went down. So like when they were here, it is. It really is the most fucking part. Everywhere. Like the wars, the killings, and it's just unfortunate the bias that we have in this world. You know, what's happening in Gaza is tragic on so many levels.
Scholars are Congo, Sudan, Lebanon, usually when still have this moron at work who doesn't call it genocide. Well, here they are.
Are you serious?
Yes.
What is it?
But it's not, it's not Palestine.
Like and all these countries, yeah. That's sad.
It's heartbreaking.
And it's heartbreaking that we as Muslims in ourselves don't know how to stand together. Like I always say, Palestine, you're in the middle of food. Your own people, the weapons that are surrounding you, when it comes to your game. all the politics involved, all the governments that take sides, it's around the countries. And I'm like, how is it that your own makers will go for loitering when you have the state debt? They have a reason to close the borders and look. How does it come with her? She's probably with the She's probably with the
Especially like amongst the
Yes, I believe.
because like basically the ones that used to over waiting for the answer for world. Yeah.
Everything was going well because they are making sure they disagree. And that's when it expanded. And the war started, and now it's just a war for resources. So they're fighting resources, but they also have other countries that will work with infrastructure, everybody has to take sides and enforcing.
You probably don't know what do you know what's on the slides?
Did you get access to it?
Yeah, but I shared the access now.
Gotcha.
So
So everybody is unfortunate.
we probably need to access it here first.
Yeah, I was just turning on the
Ah,
Okay. Okay.
maybe reload it.
I was gonna just. I probably should have done that instead of trying to search for the.
So it's gonna say, what's it say? It's gonna say there's Mortimer Island. Search for that. And oh, actually, you know what? Share it with me.
I am actually lying too. And I can tell you're
There we go.
You can tell us Somali. Who's from Eritrea?
Yeah. The whole like horn, they all have like very specific features.
But I think it's like people are not like that, so everybody blends in. I'm like, no, it's so many features.
Is it because Suhbah was part of it?
What slide would you like?
This one. Actually, don't help it. Turn. Do you have another, or are all the ports taken? They're all taken.
Looks like they're all.
Is that one an extension?
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot. USB or USB-C? Which one do you think?
I think it both. I actually don't know the difference.
That's USB-C and that's
Ah.
USB. That's,
Oh yeah. Okay. This
all
one.
right.
This one.
Try the slideshow. It's slideshow on the top right. There we go. Yes, it does work.
Okay.
Let's use. Ah, okay, great.
It works. Gotcha.
Nice. Jazakallah khair.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay.
Aisha, Hippa, Farah, Maryam. Well, that's why I had to repeat it.
I'm glad we're all on the same page. No one will take offense. far.
Like what?
Listening here since like
ROIC is zero. You, another 40 minutes. Who's doing it? Is it free?
That's my weakness. I like it better than this. I like it better than this. Yeah. I'm telling you, man.
You're talking about that pink tea, right? Yeah, no. I spoke to your dad. He gave me a long lecture about staying in touch. It's all right, but it was I needed it. So it was good. It was humbling. So are we waiting on people, or do we want to? Okay.
We're waiting for like 3 people.
I responded to because I want to come over here. I'll come to see you.
Yeah.
Oh no, the Oscars. I remember me, right? Yes, I remember you with one with Karen.
So the son speaks Mandarin, but the dad was here.
From the girls' side, is there anyone missing besides Noor?
No.
Okay. The guys' side?
No left.
Yeah, Noor left. Yeah, that's what I said besides Noor.
She wasn't dedicated to the cause.
She got the main part, so it's
Yeah, I think there's probably just one more person, so we can just start.
okay. All right. Do you want me to put the mic and stuff on, or again? Yeah. All right.
Is that as a case
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulih al-Kareem amma ba'd. All right. So what did we leave at? We left at the color of a garment and the red garment. So I'll tell you a little story quickly, inshallah. So when I was a much younger budding student of knowledge, and someone told me, like, wearing red is haram. I was like, no, dude, what are you talking about? Like, don't you know in the Sharia, there's a general rule, which is anything when it comes to mu'amalat is halal unless proven haram, and anything that comes to ibadat is haram unless proven halal. So therefore, based on this rule, unless you have some specific evidence, I'm not going to believe you, okay? Now, when we left, I said that a person may ask why. Now, one would be what we call an epistemic question. In other words, they want to know, in other words, when we talk about epistemology, it is the study of knowledge. How do you know what you know? Okay? So how do you know if you're saying that this is haram? First of all, based on the principle, who's supposed to bring the evidence? Me or the person who's making the claim? The person making the claim, right? All right, so that's the epistemic why. But then there's another why, which would say, wait a minute, let's disregard whatever the Prophet said or wherever you're getting this evidence from. Why is that unethical? Okay? Now, depending on which camp you're in, it will actually, I don't want to say expose, but perhaps for yourself will give you an understanding of where you are when it comes to what your worldview is. Okay? So for those of you who took like classes with me, you know I have a big thing about Islam not being a religion. You guys know that? Yes, you know that very clearly. Okay. So what this question does, how you ask it, would say, okay, if you're asking why, in the sense that why is it unethical to wear red? This is a, let's say, paradigmatic or worldview question. Okay? Meaning that you're asking that from a worldview that is outside of Islam. Okay? Whereas asking the question, all right, what's the evidence, means you're asking about that particular question inside the worldview of Islam. Now, for the folks that don't know what I'm talking about, because the people that have heard me talk about worldviews, you know very well those, and everyone else is very confused, like, what is he on about? Every single person has a worldview. Every single person, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim or Christian or Jew or atheist or whatever they might be, every person has lenses by which they look at reality. Okay? And those lenses will determine what they think about a number of topics. Okay? So your worldview is like a language. Everyone speaks a language. But you have some people that are bilingual. Anyone bilingual here? Or trilingual maybe? I don't know if Punjabi counts, so maybe I got 4 languages. All right. So for those who speak more than one language, you know that there's usually a dominant language and a secondary or tertiary language, right? And a lot of parents struggle with this. Like when you have immigrant parents that are bringing their kids here, at home they'll want to teach their kids whatever the home language is, right? Urdu or Arabic or whatever it is, right? But what you find over time is that those young kids, when they go out, they get used to something called code switching. In other words, at home, they're speaking Arabic or they're speaking Urdu or whatever it might be. Outside, they're speaking English. But one of those languages is more dominant. And everyone speaks a language. Like there's no such thing as a private language, by the way. Right? This was an experiment that Wittgenstein tried to do anyways. Separate issue. Yeah.
So is it the language that we think of in our mind, like when we're thinking thoughts or whatever, that's the language we consider the dominant one?
That would be considered the dominant one, right? Like what you basically think in. Okay, so if you think in English, it's English. And by the way, it doesn't mean it has to be your mother tongue. Because sometimes you'll think about things in other languages, right? But meaning, there is a dominant language, meaning one that you're more comfortable with than any other language, okay? Similarly, you have worldviews. What are the lenses by which you're looking at reality? Okay? Those lenses, sometimes what happens is, especially with young people, is that at home, they will wear the lenses of Islam. But when they leave the home, they've got the lenses of, let's say, modernity, the modern world. And they too are also doing a type of code switching. And inevitably, one of those is going to be stronger than the other. Okay? So, the question of why, if your worldview that's dominant is based on the world that you live in, let's say the modern world, your question of why is going to be like, why would that be unethical? But if the lenses by which you judge reality is going to be Islam, then the other why is going to be more important. In other words, what's the evidence? Is everyone clear on this aspect? Okay? So what I'm going to go over very quickly, and for those of you who have already done this, my apologies. What makes up a person's worldview? Okay? So for the folks that have already gone through this, ontology, what is ontology? Who remembers?
Is that like interaction with the world?
Nope. Oh, come on, guys. I thought you guys were Suhbah seminary students. This is like it's supposed to be the cream of the crop. Who remembers? So ontology is questions of existence. What exists and what doesn't exist. Do I exist? Does the table exist? And the most foundational question, does God exist? Now, depending on your answer about God existing, you have a theology, which you'll notice on the diagram there. Theology is questions about God, the nature of God. Who is God? What is the relationship between God and man? After ontology, you have epistemology. How do you know? So if you exist, how do you know you exist? How do you know God exists? How do you know about anything? What are your sources of knowledge? Is it just the world around you? Or does revelation also play a part in how you know what you know? Okay? Then you have anthropology. Who or what is the human being? Okay? Are we just material matter? Or do we have a soul as well? And a lot of those ethical questions, by the way, become very problematic based on an anthropology, what your opinion is. Because if you're a hardened philosophical naturalist, i.e. an atheist, then all you're saying is that it's only the material world. The problem with that ethically is that if it's all matter, why does it matter? If you're just stuff, then what gives value to one thing over another thing? What makes me as a human being more valuable than this table? If it's just a collection of atoms and I'm just a collection of atoms, so how do we now assess value? Now, for someone that says their anthropology is body and soul, it means a value has been given to that by way of their ruh, by way of their soul. Okay, and that comes from Allah, right? وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have honored, given value to the children of Adam. Okay? Then you have teleology, purpose. Does the universe have a purpose? Do I have a purpose? Does my shoe have a purpose? Etc. After all that, then you come to morality and ethics. So all of those ethical questions, you can debate with someone who is not Muslim, whose worldview is not Islam. Actually, I shouldn't say not Muslim. Whose worldview is not Islam. And what happens is, unless you have interrogated their worldview, you might be going in circles. Because you asking why and them asking why, you're in two separate worldviews. You haven't unpacked what exists. How do you know? What are your sources of knowledge? Who is the human being? What is the purpose? Do we have a purpose? Does the universe have a purpose? It's only once you've got through all those, then you can now have a foundation for ethics. And you can be on the same page. Then you can ask the question of like, why? And you're on the same page. I.e., what's the evidence? Okay, then you have from morality and ethics, you have law and politics, and finally the last one there is aesthetics, beauty. So, and I ran through that a bit quickly, in the course we go through that in a lot more detail. My point in mentioning this is for you to appreciate, and this is the whole, the whole objective of tonight, was to appreciate the value of Islam. Because without Islam, you are drowning in an ethical nightmare. Because you can't answer foundational questions about ethics. You might be able to say this is right, this is wrong, based on a certain intuition. And even that intuition is justified by the Islamic framework, which is the fitrah. Right? Your fitrah is what gives you that original natural human nature that Allah has put inside of us, right? That this is the fitrah upon which Allah has created us. That fitrah is where you get the moral intuition, where you think, okay, this is right, this is wrong, and that's true for all human beings. Because if we didn't have that, you wouldn't be able to do like financial transactions. You wouldn't be able to have some sense of justice. You wouldn't be able to join people when they say what's going on in Palestine is unjust, if there was no fitrah. But the fitrah cannot be the end-all and be-all, because there's certain questions that when you tease them, you may disagree. And what comes as the tool to adjudicate between who's right and who's wrong? Revelation. Right? It's nurun ala nur. It is light, the light of the fitrah, upon light of revelation. Okay? So, that being the case, let me quickly go back to, so is everyone clear about this, the worldview stuff, and what we were talking about, and the value of Islam is really what I'm trying to
push home. Okay? And what happens when you don't have Islam? Especially in the domain of morality and ethics. Now, let me come back to the red garment, and we'll finish with that. Okay? So there's a book called Drunk Tank Pink. Anyone read it? Okay. Anyone know what Drunk Tank Pink is? No. Okay. So there were in a certain, I think it was the Navy. On weekends, when the sailors would come home after whatever, going off to wherever they're going, they would come back to their bases. It was inevitable that they would go to the bars, they would get drunk, and they would get into fights. So the naval police would basically take these drunk people and throw them into prisons. They would throw them into jail cells, basically, cells. Now what happened was there was some research at the time where they said that there's a certain type of pink. It's that amoxicillin pink, for those who take antibiotics, that pink stuff. I don't know if they do that anymore, maybe not just pills. But when I was growing up, they would give you that pink liquid, what they call amoxicillin, okay? That color, they still do it?
Yeah, it tasted good.
It tasted good. That's the I don't know about that. Anyway, so what they found was that the exposure to this color had a calming effect on people, okay? So what they started to do, they started to paint all of the cells, all the jail cells, with this color. And these jail cells were called drunk tanks, because they would throw the drunk people in. And the color started to be known as Drunk Tank Pink. And that's where the title of the book comes from. So what the book does, it actually explores the concept of color and its effect upon the human psyche. Human psyche, human cognition, and human psychology. It has some interesting points. Okay, so this is what's known as an anagram. All right, so for those of you, done anagram puzzles, basically the idea is you're supposed to now think about this and figure out what word is this. You unscramble the letters. Can anyone do it really quickly? What's the word?
What's the word?
Oh, here.
Right.
Drink.
Drink. Very good. Okay. Now, the time it took you to unscramble that, okay? There were studies that were done on anagrams, okay? And in these studies, what they found was that if the people that were being tested on anagrams had a book with a red cover, that they would do 22% worse on anagrams than if it had a cover of any other color. 22%, okay? That also applied to red ink. So if they used red ink, there was also a percentage, I don't remember what it was, that their performance would drop. So the exposure to red specifically has a cognitive effect based on these studies. And there were other studies too. So they talked about number string completion puzzles. So you have something like 18, 16, 19, 15, 20, 14, 21, and you have to basically figure out what is the pattern and figure it out. That was 18% weaker when you were exposed to either a red cover or red pen. Okay? Analogy questions. Expensive is to rarely as cheap is to frequently. Right? 37% fewer questions were answered correctly when the people were exposed to red versus other colors. And that's just the book cover. Now, there were other aspects. Now, when they put people in MRI machines and they started to test, like, okay, why is it that, what happens when the person is exposed to red? What they found is that the right frontal cortex is the area that gets affected. And the right frontal cortex is responsible for something called avoidance motivation. So human beings have two types of motivations. They have a motivation where it's like you want to succeed, right? Like you're going to go for it. You're very motivated. And that's like achieving success is your motivator. But then you have a type of motivation where it's like you just don't want to fail. Like if you just pass, you'll be okay. Okay? That is what's known as, like I just mentioned, avoidance motivation. Definitely, when you experience avoidance motivation, your performance will go down. And what happens is the right frontal cortex, that is what gets affected by the color red specifically. Okay, now why am I mentioning all of these studies? Let's say I mentioned all of these studies, and then I told someone, you know what? It's haram to wear a certain type of red. Now, depending on which Y category they're in, okay, it will either have an effect on them or it will not. If they're in the Y category, why would Allah make that haram? This may be something that says, okay, well, no, that makes sense. Because when the Prophet ﷺ is going to address someone, or when you're going to address someone, you don't want them to be overly excited, because there were studies that were done that actually excites people as well. And you want people to be at the apex of cognition. If you're telling them about Islam and you want them to convince them of Islam, they need to be able to think clearly. If you're not able to rationally be at your best, this is going to have an impact on the da'wah, on calling people to Islam. So it makes sense in terms of relationships, in terms of da'wah, in terms of so many different things, why this would be the case. Okay? That would be one category. However, that also does not give you the appropriate, let's say, vantage point, because it doesn't delineate between two worldviews. It just says, I'm in the worldview which says, unless it makes sense to me, I will not believe it. I will not submit. Whereas the other category will say, all of this research is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Because if the Prophet ﷺ said it, I will believe it. And that path of getting to, if the Prophet ﷺ said it, I will believe it, is not just rational, but it's also spiritual. And that's really the difference in the two worldviews. Okay? Now, by the way, because I don't want to just leave this alone, Abdullah ibn Amr says that a man was wearing two red garments. He passed by the Prophet ﷺ, greeted him with salam, but the Prophet ﷺ did not respond. That's one hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that, Al-Bara said that the Prophet ﷺ was the average height. I saw him wearing a red hulla, and I've never seen anything better than it. So one narration says that he did not return salams to someone wearing red. Another one says he was wearing red. Okay, so how do we now reconcile these two hadith? Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, rahimahullah, he says, the clothing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions both of these hadith. He said that the red hulla is two Yemeni garments woven with red and black stripes like all other Yemeni garments. So, but pure red, in other words, you're wearing head to toe, the entire thing is red, that is what is emphatically forbidden. As long as you have another color to interrupt that particular red, it's then okay. Right. So it's not forbidden unless it's completely what you're wearing, like in totality. Yeah.
Is that only applicable to men or men and women?
So that too is also a difference, right? So you could say it's applicable to both, but because we have the Prophet ﷺ wearing red garments, it's definitely applicable to men. So, but keep in mind, it's a full red, right? So even if we said it was applicable to women, that would mean like everything from head to toe, and it's a specific type of red too, right? It's type
like
of crimson.
I feel like they're thinking of like bridal dresses being red and stuff, right?
Yeah, but remember, bridal dresses, they have something on it, right? They're not going to be pure, just head to toe with like no.
Like that type of red?
It's like crimson red. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Like very bright, vibrant red.
No, like a bright, vibrant red would be like that type of red, but it's more of a little bit of a darker red, right? So crimson, almost
Like
not burgundy, yeah, kind of like that type of red, right? So it's not even like a, like I know you guys might be thinking of what is it? Yeah, like maroon-ish.
Oh dang!
So it's not even exactly maroon, but it's in that area. So it's you guys know what saffron is?
Yeah.
So it's saffron red, to be very exact, right? I think that probably is. So, but anyways, the point wasn't about the ruling. The point was what category you find yourselves in when rulings come about, and this entire discussion about ethics hopefully has clarified the need for Islam. Because if you don't have Islam, your ability to navigate ethics becomes almost impossible, right? And this is why you have the severe culture wars you have in the United States today. That's why the society is ripping apart. And my argument in this domain is that unless the United States adopts Islam, you will find that it's on its way out. You know, and I have a whole class on this called Culture Wars.
Our dollar is worthless, our society is nonsense.
Creeping Sharia.
Yeah, there we go. So I'll go to stop there.
Does anyone have any questions? We can take some for maybe what?
Is there like good arguments, secular wise, to answer those?
They try, and that's a whole area. That's a whole area of ethics, basically, right? The problem is they can't answer meta-ethical questions. So let me just talk briefly about meta-ethics, because you open this door. There are things that we call objectively moral and subjectively moral. Okay, things that are subjectively moral, it means they're subject to limited mind and human emotion, right? So if the society comes together and says, okay, this is moral, right? It comes together and says, this is immoral, this is immoral, okay? But if we ask the question, okay, imagine now that you turn on the news and you see that there was a news report showing a doctor that had just delivered a baby, and as soon as the baby came out, he beheaded the baby. Is that moral or immoral? People quiet, man.
Immoral, yeah.
Moral, immoral? Immoral, right? Okay. Let's say all human beings came together and they said, you know what, this is moral. Is it moral or immoral?
It's subjectively
I'm asking you as a person, would you still say it's moral or immoral? Still be immoral, right? It doesn't matter if all of humanity came together. Like beheading a brand new baby, like why would you, like that's just, now, if you say it's immoral and it's not contingent upon the agreement of society, this is what's known as objectively immoral. In other words, it's not subject to limited mind and human emotion. Okay? If you say there are objective morals, you have to then ask the question, what is the moral anchor? Why is it objectively moral? You can't say, oh, because people agree on it, because then it makes it subjective. If you say there are objective morals, you have to have an anchor. If you have an anchor, by default, you have to say that that anchor is outside of limited mind and human emotions. If you say that, well, then you have to say that God exists. If God exists, you have to say, okay, well, how do we now determine those morals, right? So this is the difference between objective and subjective morals. Someone that says that all morals are subjective has another problem. Anyone want to take a crack at what that problem would be? If all morals are just subjective,
then there are no morals.
then everything is just subjective. So when people come to you and say like, oh, it's terrible, you know, all these terrorists and this and that, what do they say about Muslims? Just say, okay, well, that's your moral, this is my moral. All morals are subjective. But when they come to you, they always come with this very almost pompous, like, this is objectively wrong. Like, objectively wrong, but what is your moral anchor, man? Like, how do you substantiate that? Right? Especially an atheist, because then you cut. Like, how are you going to substantiate that? Evolution, okay, that's subject to biological change, it's still subjective, though. Right? How are you going to answer the question of objective morality? Right? This is what, and this is really what the issue that arises when we talk about objective and subjective morals. But one other question someone may ask, and that is, would you say that, let's say, killing is objectively immoral? What do you think?
No.
Yes? Killing someone.
I would think so, but
Okay.
It
Someone's.
depends on the reason why.
It depends on the reason why.
Yeah.
Okay, what's a good reason to kill someone?
If it's criminal, like if there is death penalty.
Death penalty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Self-defense.
Self-defense. Very good.
If they kill someone else.
If they kill someone else. Okay. Someone's coming to rob your house, right? And they're about to kill your family. You'd be justified in killing them, right? Okay. So now someone may say, aha, you see, this moral that you're talking about is not objective. This is subjective. But what they're confusing is that we're not saying that morals are absolute. We're saying that they're objective and they are context sensitive. Meaning just because a moral is objective doesn't mean that it is absolute in every single situation. It can still be objective and be based on context. It still does not take away from its objectivity. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay, good. All right. Did I answer your question? I don't know. I think I went on a tangent. What was your question?
I forgot what my question was, but I missed it.
Fair enough. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
So when it comes to doing dawah with a non-Muslim populace and they don't have that Islamic worldview,
Yeah.
how would you go about giving dawah to them?
So you saw this well, not that slide. Let me go back to the last one. Where's my clicker?
I
That's all right. You want to go back? Yeah, that one right there. So you notice on the slide, the components of the worldview. There's a color gradation, and the reason I did that is because you have the most important aspects, and there's a hierarchy, meaning ontology, epistemology are like the darkest, and then everything else flows from there, right? You get lighter, 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 lighter. So for your question, where should your dawah start? It should start with ontology and epistemology, right? And teleology and anthropology. Those are the 4 areas. To make it very simple, does God exist? And is he worthy of worship? Those are the fundamentals, right? Because all of that is contingent on, okay, does God exist? That's an ontological question, all right? Is he worthy of worship? Well, how do you know that? What is knowledge, okay? And is he worthy of worship? Why should we worship Allah? That may be let's say, a teleological question, and an anthropological question, right? So those 4 areas is where you would start, but to make it very simple, you start with the kalima, right? Because on the day of judgment, Allah's not going to ask you, did you convince this person of this ethical issue, right? Okay, someone said, you women, you must be really hot, you're wearing hijab, right? Now let's get an argument about the morality of hijab. Is it moral or immoral? And, and your reference point is, well, modesty. And so therefore, let's say you convince the person. Okay, usually you can't because they're like, well, you're saying I'm immodest? How dare you, right? So modest, but let's say you do convince them and they drop dead. On the day of judgment, when they get resurrected and standing before Allah, will that piece of ethical information save them from the hellfire? No. What saves them from the hellfire is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So your focal point, no matter how you get there, should always be La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, right? There's nothing worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That's why with all of this, philosophical nomenclature and all of these things, it just boils down to 2 things, man, and that's what the Shahada is made up of. And that's essentially what you're going to be asked about. You won't be asked about ontology, epistemology, and all these other things. So Allah knows best.
Sorry, one more question.
Sure.
Can you explain epistemology? I'm kind of confused by what is knowledge.
Okay, so it is how do you know what you know? That's essentially what it is. It's a study of knowledge, but how do you know something, right?
How do you know if it's true?
How do you know if it's true? Okay, so for instance, how do you know that today is Friday? There's a source of knowledge, right? So, I look at my phone, and I trust the calendar of my phone, and therefore my phone says Friday, so today's Friday. So how do you know what you know? Similarly, when we're talking about how do we know about the color red and its ruling, okay, well, we know that by the way of the hadith and so on and so forth. So sources of knowledge and how do you know? Those are epistemological questions. Yeah. All right. Any other last question? Yeah.
How do I go from the morality question that the non-Muslim brings up to giving them that dawah of the kalima? Like that's what I mean.
Okay, so there's a couple of things here. Number one, the more you engage in da'wah, the more experience you have, the more you're going to do it a lot easier. So there's a quick and easy way of doing it, but that's not always the most effective way. Okay, so the quick and easy way is to say, look, I appreciate your question, but in order to understand the answer to that question, you have to understand a few fundamentals about Islam. You have a few minutes to go over some of the fundamentals. Okay, that is the quick and easy way of doing it. When you get a little more experience, you can actually use the particular moral item to your advantage, right? So something like, let's say, abortion. And now, look, man, when we talk about abortion, like before I get into whether I think it's ethical or unethical, there's an underlying assumption. There's a presupposition here, and that presupposition is, let's say they're for abortion, right? They're pro-choice. Let's just give you an example. The assumption is what? My body, my choice, and that's self-ownership. So, do you think, like, why do we say we own ourselves? In Islam, we say that our ownership comes from the divine, because we believe that we were created, and this is why we believe in God. And so notice, I went from the ethical question, and I moved into, okay, well, we believe our ownership is from Allah, and why do we believe in Allah? Because that's really what the difference is.
But that takes a little bit of practice. Does that make sense? And then you can say, okay, what makes us a good owner? Like when if you compare like our conception of the divine, we say that he's maximally perfect in his mercy. Even us to ourselves, we're not merciful, right? How many chocolate cakes do you eat and you go, man, I wish I had lost 15 pounds, right? We're not merciful to ourselves. We don't have maximum mercy. But Allah is maximally perfect in mercy, right? Every heartbeat, every breath, everything was given to you as a free gift. So are we even good owners of ourselves if we claim that we have self-ownership? Doesn't it make more sense that the one that created us with this state of mercy, with all these blessings, based on who he is, isn't he a better owner in the first place anyways? So you see how I went from the ethical issue to the da'wah itself. But again, that takes a little bit of practice, right? So I've been doing this for about 20 plus years, so a little bit of experience. Does that answer your question? So the short way of doing it, thank you for your question. In order to understand the answer to that question, you have to understand some fundamentals about Islam. You have a few minutes for that, you know. And they may say, no, I don't have time for that, or like, no, we'll just give you the answer, yes or no, right? But that's, you know, that's not being really very sincere. I always tell people, like, okay, you want a yes or no, like, why are you demanding yes or no questions? It's like me asking you, is your mother out of jail yet? Yes or no? Yes or no? Is your mother out of jail yet? Yes or no? You can't say anything else. I mean, that gets, you know, there's no epistemic humility in the question. So, did that answer your question?
I mean, like, I'll hit them with it. This is what Islam says, and they're convinced of the issue, but I don't know how to move from that to defend them, if that makes sense.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. You know, when you say this is what Islam says, right, then you have to kind of move. If they like it, they're like, okay, well, okay, like give me an example. What would you say is like, what's the issue you're talking about? Because it depends on the issue as well. Interest.
Yeah, in Islam, not doing interest.
Okay, so interest-bearing transactions.
Yes.
Okay. So what you can say is that, look, with interest-bearing transactions, most people think that a credit-based economy is the way to go because that's the culture we live in. But you have enough insight to understand that interest is, you know, there's a problem with interest. The Quran tells us there's a problem with interest. But the only one that would know based on society and the implications of society from a macro point of view, in these economic terms, is the one that created us. The one that has the picture, because human beings only have the pixel. We only have a limited view. Right? So that's now we move now from interest-bearing transactions, the effect on the economy, Well, who knows the economy better than the one that created us? Because economics is based on society, right? And society, who can know society in its totality except the one that created it? And that also is transhistoric as well. So anyway, does that make sense? So that takes a little bit of practice.
Have you considered poetry? That was fire.
Poetry, that's Hamza's line, man. That's Hamza's. I just jacked it from him, so I didn't pick that up. I'm not making a claim to that. So, all right. Can we conclude here, inshallah? We're good unless anyone has any final question, which I'll try to keep short. We're good? Okay. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you, increase you in khair, and may He accept from you all of your efforts towards His deen, and accept the best of your deeds, and allow you to enter Jannah for those. Allahumma ameen. Assalamu alaikum. Kind of need that.
I thought it was Suhbah's. That's why I was like, okay, I need to.
No, maybe I should take it back.
Oh.
Yeah, I carry it because sometimes organizations don't have.
All right. Oh yeah. Thank you.
And then go to Instagram once you end this